Yeah, it's kind of the, I guess, the midwinter doldrums. We're back here in western Minnesota. You know, the thing about this is you get late in the year or later in the winter like this, we're getting a lot of snow. I mean, some of these hard-sided fish houses, I don't know how they're going to get them off. There's going to be a lot of slush on the ice, and you know, you get these cold winters, short days, lots of snow. And as a rule of thumb, a lot of times we'll find a lot of these fish pull deep. You know, a lot of the weeds that are up shallow, they start to die off, and so these fish really start to key in on these basins, these bowls, and these soft bottom edges. And so that's what we're going to do here is we're just going to drill a grid of holes and hop around here. This lake's got nice bluegills, but you know, this part of the world here near Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, there's so many lakes. I mean, there's so many great lakes. You know, from Detroit Lakes up to Pelican Rapids, there's just a swath of lakes, small lakes with really, really good panfish. If you love bluegills, if you love crappies, this is definitely an area to key in on. There we go. Oh, I love that. That fish is digging. Look at that. Oh yeah, nice bluegill. Quality fish. Be just a great eating fish right there. Goodness. Love this. Lots of quality panfish in this part of the world. And the key for me is just getting more than one fish to show up on the screen. Seems like if you have one down there, you pull your hair out trying to get them to bite. If you get multiple fish come through, then you at least turn one of them and get them to compete against each other.
There we go. This is going to be one of those nicer ones. That fish finally came up. Oh yeah. Oh, dandy. Oh, look at that. That's what we're out here trying to get, and just bee cooked him. Absolute stud of a bluegill. Get him back and see if we can't get another one. Let's hope that they're going to start showing up.
You know, the biggest thing with fishing in the middle of the winter like this, when you kind of get into the winter doldrums where the fishing just gets tougher, is a lot of times you're going to have these really distinct bite windows, and you have to be conscious of that in the sense that if you're marking fish, if you have a flow of fish and they're just not raising, they're just not coming in and eating, you know, sometimes you just have to wait those fish out. You know, there's kind of an old saying, you know, you don't leave fish to find fish. You know, sometimes you just have to wait out that bite window. You know, and sometimes it might line up with a major or minor. Sometimes it'll line up with sunrise or sunset, low light. But these fish might only eat for a half an hour, 45 minutes a day sometimes, you know. And the biggest thing is you have to have your line in the water when that happens, you know. And so come midwinter, when things do get tougher, sometimes you just have to slow down and be a little bit more methodical and just grind out these fish. But you know what? At the end of the day, they add up.
You know, we're trying to get these fish to come up, and he's came up, 5-6 feet on me. But he just comes and looks. You know, you can actually watch when that fish starts to get excited, and you can see those fins start to move. That's usually when I know that they're going to move on your bait. Oh, here he comes. Boy, just digging. You know, these fish are, anywhere you go, this is a quality bluegill.
You know, it's just classic midwinter doldrums from what we're seeing here today, and that these fish are just glued to the bottom third of the water column. And sometimes too, you know, you get midwinters like these fish quit moving as much. And so, you know, if you can imagine, we've got a grid of holes through here. This is just a soft bottom transition, you know, 19 to 20 feet. Basically, it comes up shallow, weeds behind us here. And these fish are just on that soft bottom edge, kind of a basin edge, I guess is the best way to explain it. You know, there might be, say, 20 bluegills living in maybe a 30-yard area, and then there's 20 bluegills over there, but they're not just running up and down this. It's almost like you can wear out your welcome, where you're on a hole, you catch a few fish, and it's like the fish that are left get really hard to catch. You just got to go to a new hole and get some fresh water. There's a good one there. Wear out your welcome, and then you move 30 yards. This might be a bass, which is kind of a good sign when you're looking for big bluegills and you start catching some bass. I always thought that's a good omen. They like to run together. Oh yeah, bucket mouth greenfish.
Boy, just digging.
Good one, Tony?
Good enough. Yeah,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is just fun. Just a beautiful fish. Look at how pretty the colors are. Yeah, it's been a tough bite, but they're just got a beautiful color to them. You know, on a typical bite, these fish will come in and they'll just devour something. Today, these fish are just a little bit picky, and it seems like if you don't have fresh bait, they don't stick around very long. So we're just trying to maximize the time we have and try to get as many of these fish topside as we can, because they sure are fun to catch. We are in mid-January, and you know, this is the time of year that these sunfish and the big bluegills start to push out to these basins. What we discovered was the bite was a little off because there's been a lot of fronts and some weather coming through. But what we started to do is we were watching our vexillars, and we could see where the bottom composition changed. We went from kind of a hard bottom towards the center of those basins, and once we moved to the edges, we could see where the softer bottom was, and that's where those fish really seemed to be roaming the outer edges, and that's where we had most of our success. You know, we had to downsize a little bit. We had to go with some wax worms, but once we kind of dialed in our program, we were able to put a ton of fish topside.
There he is. Oh yeah, love that. Swimming in a circle. I think I know what it is. Oh, pull the transducer. That is a gill. Look at that. Look how thick. Oh, look how thick that fish is. That is just a beautiful, beautiful bluegill. You know, and it's been kind of a fussy bite. I started off with soft plastics. I started off with some bigger tungsten. Had to downsize, you know, 2-pound test. Small jigs. It's kind of that Midwinter doldrums, but that right there, that's a bull. All right, get that back in the water. Yeah, it's a 6-inch hole. Yeah, that's probably close to a 9-inch fish. And I tell you what, middle of the winter time when these fish get a little fussy, I just love that teardrop vertical jig. That's a half ant. 2-pound test. What I like about vertical jigs is that from a fish's perspective, it's just a lot smaller footprint, just a lot smaller profile, moves less water when you're jigging it. So just a more subtle, subdued presentation. And I'm putting wax worms on there. Again, I tried plastics right away. Caught a couple bass. I could not get these bluegills to go good on the plastic. What I'm doing is I'm crushing those wax worms just so they flop. That's the program. Classic midwinter pan fishing. These fish don't want to open their mouths. You know, the big thing with fishing is, you know, you can't control the fish. You can't dictate to the fish. And I think that's so important to stress. You know, there's a lot of people, the way they talk, you'd almost think that they can, in the sense that If the fish are in a real foul mood, for example, you're going to trigger a reaction, you're going to do this, do that. At the end of the day, fishing is just a process of elimination. You try different things that you think are going to work until you find something that clicks, that those fish want. And when these fish get off like this, where, you know, you just have these short bite windows, which, you know, a lot of times it's right at evening on a lot of these lakes, and you just have a short ceiling where these fish are going to climb in the water column, they're glued to the bottom, they don't want to chase, they're not moving much. You know, you have to react and adapt to those fish. And a lot of times it's all about dropping down, you know, 1 pound, 2 pound test, using really small jigs, you know, using live bait. You know, it's a deal where sometimes you have to use live bait over soft plastics. And you do what you have to do to catch fish, but you know what? I don't care what I got to do to catch them. They all add up at the end of the day. And, you know, and there's some lakes where just because of fishing pressure, just the way that ecosystem is, where there's just some lakes that are almost always tough, you know, but, you know, that's really common. Is you can have a phenomenal lake where there's not a lot of pressure and you have the right situations or the right circumstances, and those fish can be really tough. And there's some things that you can do though to catch those fish.
There we go.
Good one.
Nothing wrong with these.
There, good fish. I hope it's a bluegill. Oh yeah, look at that. There. Gorgeous. You know, when you start using 1 pound test, 2 pound test, that's a bowl in the china cabinet there. These fish will break you off. Fun stuff. You got sawdust all over. I just keep threading on these wax worms. But, you know, I'll use plastics whenever I can because of the durability. There's a lot to like about plastics, but you know what? There's times where you just have to resort to bait. You've even been noticing, you know, you set the hook, you hook a fish or you miss a fish and they just scatter. I mean, they're just gone. They're just spooking. They're just off. And that's kind of the thing you notice when the fish are really spooky and when they don't have a very high ceiling. When you can't get these fish to climb up very high in the water column, there's really not much you can do to change that. You just have to make the adjustments. Some of them are so fussy. Then you get the next one just comes in and eats it. It's almost like you need to get 2 or 3 of them down there. You have one, they're just temperamental.
There we go.
What do you got there, Tony?
Another head digger. Just another dandy. Just a good eating sunfish.
You know, this is just a deal where I don't know, we've got maybe 100-yard stretch here where it seems like we're marking quite a few fish, and we're just making small moves. Sit on a hole for 5-10 minutes, we're not marking fish, we'll move, but sometimes you'll get a good hole and you'll wear out your welcome and let that hole rest for half an hour, 45 minutes, and it's amazing how a good hole will charge up. You pop a few more fish out of it. Come on. There he is. Oh yeah. I love that. When you just set the hook and they just stop. These big bluegills and they pull out drag. You gotta love it. Gotta love it. There's a nice pumpkin seed. Isn't that one of nature's most prettiest fish? That's cool. Oh, we got a high flyer here. High big marks always get me excited. Boy, they do not want to climb though. We're always talking about getting these fish to come up. Oh, there he is. Talk about getting fish to come up in the water column. These fish do not want to budge, but look at that. That fish is just stopping it. Look at that. I better pull the transducer out for this. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. Oh. They just get a different sheen on them. That purple pinkish sheen when they start to get big. That's a big bluegill right there. Beautiful. Still using the same half ant. Pretty simple. Just basically a teardrop. A tungsten teardrop is all that is. Basically going old school. Yeah, that's just a gorgeous fish right there. Beautiful. That fills up the hole. You know, there's so many lakes in this area, and you look at the big lakes, you know, like you look at Big Detroit and Lida and Melissa. And there's a lot of big lakes or bigger lakes, and there's also a lot of small lakes. And a lot of times for this, you know, what I find is that if you look at a map of a lake, if you get like a secondary basin or some type of a neck down area where you just have a smaller amount of area for these fish to hide, it makes it a lot easier to find these fish. And there's so many situations where you get in that basin that's, you're looking for anywhere from say 12 to maybe 30 feet of water depending on the lake, and it's typically just flat on the bottom, a soft bottom, and that's where all your bug hatches are. That's where all your zooplankton is come midwinter, and a lot of times that's where all your fish are. And so out here, you know, we weren't able to find any fish on any shallow patterns, all classic basin bites, and that's so typical on so many different fisheries this time of year. There he is. Oh yeah, there we go. That one's got some ears on it. Nice. It's probably about a good 8-inch fish. Get out of here. There we go. All right.
You know, you come into this Becker, Ottertail County, and you know, Detroit Lakes itself, there's over 400 lakes within 10 miles of downtown. You know, I love coming out and exploring new lakes, trying new bodies of water. You can always find lakes that aren't real busy, aren't real populated, and a lot of times those are when you're gonna find your biggest and most active panfish.
Yeah. Loving that. This fish is fighting too. Oh yeah, look at that. I just figure when they're about your hand size, that's just a perfect eating fish. There's more down there waiting for me if I can get back down in time. Oh, this is a good one. That's what we're looking for. They just come up in a big circle. Oh yeah, look at that. That's a nice bull. Come here. That, look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? Big long pectoral fins. Big old ear tab. Yeah, good stuff. It might be a timing thing too. It definitely seems like these fish are starting to get a little bit more wound up. Getting later in the day. It's pretty typical. Yeah, look at that. Ear tab. That is just gorgeous. One of my favorite fish.
There we go. When sunfish pull drag, you know it's a good one. What do we have here? Nice fish. Just beautiful fish. It seems like as we're getting later in the day, these fish are starting to get a little bit more active. We were trying some soft plastics earlier and they were just so fussy and very particular about biting, so we switched it up and downsized, put on some waxworms, and we're starting to see these fish start to get a little bit more aggressive, more active.
There he is. Oh yeah. Oh, I love that. Get a small rod, light line, and these fish just pull. Oh, look at this. This is a bluegill to close on, Tony. Look at that.
Wow.
That is why we came out here. This is why
I can
we
see
drilled
those
these
ear
holes.
tabs from here.
Isn't that gorgeous? That, I just love that. It's just beautiful. See how tall they get? They get that hump on the nose. Good stuff. Way to end it. Well, tell you what, that's the last fish I catch tonight. That's a good one. You know, we probably got maybe 10 minutes of light left for the sunsets, and you know, this is typical. You know, we found these fish earlier. You know, they're running this transition, this soft bottom transition, marking fish. At first, we were pulling our hair out. It's still a finesse bite, but I tell you what, as the sun's gotten low, it's gotten later in the day, these fish have definitely opened up a little bit for us, and we're starting to catch some bigger fish, which, tell you what, if I look at all the big bluegills in my life, I bet a big percentage were caught in the last hour of daylight. So that's just so typical, but just a cool, awesome fishing experience. You get in this western Minnesota, Detroit Lakes area, and there is so much water just like this. And you know what? It's a holiday, and there's nobody out here. Unbelievable. More people got to get out and fish.